This program is supported by SMC Global Power, RJK Services Manpower Agency Corporation, Stark Molecular Laboratory, North Luzon Express Terminal.
Cannons are fired by Scots Guards in Hyde Park for Queen Elizabeth II's 96th birthday.
It's the Queen's real birthday compared to her official one that takes place on the second Saturday of June. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I am CJ Hirro.
And I am Nina Ricci, Alagao, Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines. Russian President Vladimir Putin hails liberation of Mariupol, calls off operation to storm steel plant. French presidential candidates Marine Le Pen and Emmanuel Macron trade shots over Russia and hijab ban. Israel responds to rocket attacks from Gaza militants with airstrikes. Deadly violence continues to escalate. UK court order moves WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange closer to U.S. extradition. And the Flash actor Ezra Miller arrested again in Hawaii for throwing a chair at a woman. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu told Russian President Vladimir Putin that Russian forces have fully captured the Ukrainian port city of Mariupol, apart from the giant Azovstal steel plant. Taking full control of Mariupol on the Azov Sea would be a major strategic victory for Russia, helping it to connect annexed Crimea to the territories of pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. Putin hailed the liberation of Mariupol as more than 1,400 militants have laid down their arms and over 142,000 civilians have also been evacuated from the city.
Совершение боевой работы по освобождению Мариуполя – это успех. Поздравляю вас. Передайте слова благодарности в войска. Предлагаемый штурм промышленной зоны считаю нецелесообразным. Приказ.
However, Shoigu said more than 2,000 militants loyal to Kyiv still remain entrenched at the Azovstal steel plant, where the last pocket of Ukrainian resistance has been sheltering using the facility's network of underground tunnels. Putin said the liberation of Mariupol was a success for Russian forces, but ordered Shoigu to call off the planned storming of the Azovstal industrial area, dismissing it as impractical.
Предложите еще раз всем, кто до сих пор не сложил оружие, сделать это. Российская сторона гарантирует им жизнь и достойное обращение с ними в соответствии с соответствующими международно-правовыми актами.
Putin ordered Shoigu to invite other Ukrainian militants who have not laid down their arms to do so, as Russia guarantees their lives and decent treatment in accordance with the relevant international legal acts. Meanwhile, a Russian court slapped a series of small fines on Google for failing to take down contentious YouTube videos about the Kremlin's military operation in Ukraine. The Moscow court ordered the U.S. tech behemoth to pay a total of 11 million rubles or $135 for ignoring the state media regulator's orders to remove posts alleging heavy Russian losses in Ukraine.
Tough talk from Russian President Vladimir Putin. Capable of carrying nuclear charges, the Sarmat missile will make the Kremlin's enemies think twice. He told a virtual meeting of high-ranking army officials that Russia has successfully tested its next-generation intercontinental ballistic missile. Putin has called the Sarmat invincible. The Sarmat Super Heavy Intercontinental Ballistic Missile is designed to elude anti-missile defense systems with a short initial boost phase, giving enemy surveillance systems a tiny window to track. Weighing more than 200 tons and being able to transport multiple warheads, the missile can hit any target on Earth, according to Putin. Meanwhile, the U.S. government said it does not consider Russia's test of its next-generation Sarmat missile a threat. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the U.S. received advance notice of the test under the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. Now, on another issue, Putin has ordered a review of Moscow's position within the World Trade Organization to counter what he calls illegal sanctions imposed over its conflict with Ukraine. His comments came during a televised government meeting focused on how to revive Russia's key metals industry. Now, Russia is one of the world's largest exporters of raw products such as rolled steel.
Lukoil's CEO Vagit Alekperov resigned provided no reason for his decision to leave the company that he turned into one of the world's largest energy producers. Lukoil said Alekperov was resigning as both chief executive and chairman of the company's board. Alekperov controlled 3.1% of Lukoil's voting shares and was the beneficiary of another 5.4% stake as of March 31, according to the company. The announcement came less than 2 months after Lukoil became one of the first major domestic firms to speak out against Russia's campaign in Ukraine. Alekperov has been hit by Western sanctions over Moscow's military campaign in Ukraine. He was still added to the list of sanctions against powerful Russian business leaders by Britain, with which Lukoil has close ties.
A few days ahead of the presidential election, incumbent French President Emmanuel Macron and far-right rival Marine Le Pen engaged in a heated debate over relations with Russia and the Islamic headscarf. The two will face each other in the second runoff on April 24 as they both aim to sway undecided voters. France faces a stark choice between the centrist Macron and the anti-immigration Le Pen, who seeks to become the country's first far-right head of state in an outcome that would send shockwaves around Europe. There was little cordiality in the bruising 3-hour live televised debate, with Macron repeatedly seeking to land punches on Le Pen over her record, while she sought to keep the focus on the government's performance. With the Russia-Ukraine conflict overshadowing the campaign, Macron angrily zeroed in on a loan Le Pen's party had taken from a Czech-Russian bank ahead of her 2017 election campaign. Macron also referred to Le Pen's past recognition of Russia's 2014 annexation of the Ukrainian peninsula of Crimea and asked to explain why she did it. Le Pen replied that she was an absolutely and totally free woman, arguing that her party had only taken that loan as it could not find financing in France, where banks refused to lend to her. Macron adopted a variety of poses to express skepticism at her arguments, raising his eyebrows, leaning his chin on his fists, and lamenting in apparent bewilderment, Madame Le Pen, Madame Le Pen.
In related news, French President Emmanuel Macron is favored to win the runoff, with most polls showing an advantage of over 10%. The win would make him the first French president to be re-elected since Jacques Chirac in 2002. Latest polls showed Macron moved further ahead, averaging a score of almost 56% before Sunday's decisive runoff vote. But analysts and allies of the president have warned the result is far from a foregone conclusion, with polls indicating that over 10% of French voters have yet to decide who to vote for. Election rival Marine Le Pen claimed Macron, who is aware of his somber prospects of winning a second term, have turned to blackmail by fear. This was after Foreign Minister Bruno Le Maire had claimed that a vote for Le Pen would hand France's sovereignty to Vladimir Putin. Supporters of both camps celebrated the performances of their candidates, with Macron brandishing his trademark self-confidence and Le Pen avoiding the pitfalls of 2017.
Palestinian militants fired volleys of rockets from Gaza into Israel. The latter then responded with airstrikes in the biggest escalation since an 11-day war last year. Yesterday evening, a rocket from Gaza fell harmlessly in a garden in the southern Israeli city of Sderot. Witnesses and security sources said Israel struck back in central Gaza after midnight, prompting further launches of at least 4 rockets by the militants. Israel's army jets had targeted a military post and a tunnel complex containing raw chemicals used for the manufacture of rocket engines. On the other hand, Hamas, the Islamist movement ruling Gaza, said it had fired surface-to-air rockets at Israeli planes. In late March and early April, Palestinians and Israeli Arabs carried out 4 deadly attacks in Israel that claimed 14 lives, mostly civilians. A total of 23 Palestinians have meanwhile been killed since March 22, including assailants who targeted Israelis.
Israeli police prevented hundreds of Jewish ultra-nationalist protesters from approaching Jerusalem's Muslim quarter. More than 8,000 ultra-nationalist demonstrators carrying Israeli flags gathered in the early evening in a square outside the old city. But authorities were trying to prevent more violence after weeks of tensions. Police blocked hundreds of protesters from reaching Damascus Gate, which is the main entrance to the Muslim quarter of the city. Some demonstrators shouted, "Death to the Arabs." Tensions have spiked in the Israeli-occupied East Jerusalem amid nearly a month of deadly violence in Israel and the occupied West Bank.
A 6.7 magnitude earthquake struck off the western coast of Nicaragua. The United States Geological Survey, or USGS, data showed the quake hit at 1:42 a.m. at a depth of 15.7 miles, with the epicenter located about 38 miles from the coastline. No tsunami threat was reported. Residents said that strong tremors were felt in the city, or the capital city of Managua. According to Nicaraguan Vice President Rosario Murillo, there were no immediate reports of damage. The U.S. Pacific Tsunami Warning Center reported that no threat, and the USGS said there was a low likelihood of casualties and damage. Coming up, UK court order moves WikiLeaks founder closer to extradition to the U.S., and Assange's supporters cry injustice. Shanghai eases COVID-19 lockdowns, lets 4 million residents leave their homes. And Peru plans law for chemical castration of pedophile rapists. These and more stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart, Arlex Trading and Construction Supplies.
Love,
sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba, sasamahan ka naming tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
This portion is brought to you by Quezon City Motor Vehicle Inspection Center, Robig Builders.
An unexpected drop in subscribers sent Netflix shares into freefall, plunging more than 35% early Wednesday. This equates to a drop of over $50 billion or 2.6 trillion pesos in market value. And while the company blamed the drop on shared passwords and the suspension of its services in Russia, Tesla CEO Elon Musk tweeted that it is the streaming service's wokeness that has made it unwatchable. Once a rallying cry for systemic racism, wokeness has been co-opted to denounce leftist beliefs. Echoing Musk's opinion, Media Research Center contributor Elise Earhart said part of the reason why Netflix has struggled in 2022 is its woke, left-wing, LGBTQ-obsessed, and even pedophilic programming. According to critics, with the rapid expansion of its original repertoire, Netflix is no longer a provider of pure entertainment, but a propaganda machine. An article from the University of Birmingham noted that in recent years, these Netflix originals have become increasingly politicized. A documentary of this nature was 2017's Get Me Roger Stone, which explored the life of one of Trump's top and most controversial advisors. And in 2019, Knock Down the House documented the 2018 primary campaigns of progressive Democrats. Netflix is an American entertainment company founded by Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph in 1997. It has 222 million paid memberships in over 190 countries. Meanwhile, there have been several times when Musk has regarded leftist woke politics as woke mind virus, which he thinks is arguably one of the greatest threats to modern civilization. According to Musk, it is, or at its heart, wokeness is divisive, exclusionary, and hateful. It basically gives mean people a shield to be cruel, armored in false virtue.
In related news, billionaire investor William Ackman liquidated a $1.1 billion bet on Netflix, locking in a loss of more than $400 million. The streaming service's stock plunged following news that it lost subscribers for the first time in a decade. Ackman's hedge fund Pershing Square Capital Management made a sudden U-turn, selling the 3.1 million shares it had bought just 3 months ago as Netflix shares tumbled 35% to $226.19. While Netflix's business is fundamentally simple to understand, In light of recent events, we have lost confidence in our ability to predict the company's future prospects with a sufficient degree of certainty, said Ackman in a brief statement. He added that Netflix's proposed business model changes, including incorporating advertising and going after non-paying customers, made sense but would make the company too unpredictable in the short term.
A UK court issued a formal order to extradite the Australian founder of WikiLeaks to the US, where he would face trial for the publication of secret files related to the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. The ruling by a magistrate in central London brings the long-running legal saga in the UK courts closer to a conclusion. But the lawyers of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange have until May 18 to make representations to Patel. They could also potentially launch further appeals on other points in the case. Meanwhile, Australia said it will not challenge Assange's extradition to the United States. Australian Senator Simon Birmingham said the country has confidence in the independence and integrity of the British justice system. He also added that the government was not arguing against the extradition and Assange's right to appeal remained. Assange can seek an appeal to the High Court, in which Birmingham said Australia would continue to provide consular assistance to its jailed citizen.
Still on the extradition order on WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, his supporters accused Washington of trying to muzzle reporting of legitimate security concerns. If convicted, Assange could face up to 175 years in prison. The case has then become a cause for media freedom. Protesters held aloft placards imploring "Don't extradite Assange" and attached yellow "Free Assange" ribbons to walls outside the court. Journalist Carolina Gratterol called the ruling another day in the death of democracy and the rule of law in the United Kingdom.
I think he will die, sadly, in jail if he's sent. He faces espionage charge, which is a complete crazy case against a journalist that actually told us the truth about crimes committed by United States Army in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Now here in the Philippines, the number of deaths due to tropical depression Agaton now tallies at 224, according to the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC. The majority of the reported deaths came from Eastern Visayas, with a total of 202, while 17 of the total reported deaths were from Western Visayas, 3 from Davao, and 2 from Central Visayas. The number of reported missing also climbed to 147 from 111, while the number of injured remained at 8, according to the government tally. A total of more than 2 million people, or almost 600,000 families, were affected by Agaton from 2,421 barangays in Bicol, Western Visayas, Central Visayas, Eastern Visayas, Northern Mindanao, Davao, Soxargen, and Caraga. Of this number, 109,518 individuals, or 29,911 families, were served within 447 evacuation centers.
Meanwhile, some follow-up on the floods in South Africa. Millions of people remain without water more than a week after deadly storms pounded the country's east coast. As rescue operations continue, more than 10,000 soldiers have been deployed to the region. They are there to assist with the search efforts and relief operations. They also offer engineering, plumbing, and electrical support to try to get basic services running. Some quick numbers: at the least 448 people are dead, 40,000 are homeless. The raging water damaged more than 600 schools and dozens of hospitals. At the port of Durban, a backlog of thousands of shipping containers is expected to take a week to clear.
China's largest city is inching toward reopening after a weeks-long COVID-19 lockdown. Most of Shanghai's 25 million residents have been confined to their homes since last month. But a gradual easing of restrictions since last week is allowing almost half of the city's residents to go outdoors. In fact, another 4 million people will no longer have to remain indoors. Some factories have resumed production, but workers have to live on site. On social media, however, people are complaining about the uneven enforcement of the restrictions. Some say they live in areas with no quarantine, but authorities are denying them permission to leave their homes. The latest outbreak has seen more than 400,000 cases in the city since March. City authorities have confirmed 25 deaths, with the first from this outbreak reported on Monday.
Mask up if you don't want to dodge another outbreak. A plea from health officials in Los Angeles, California, as the region sees yet again an increase in positive cases of COVID-19. JC Gabrintina reports.
Los Angeles public health officials strongly urge Angelinos to mask up while indoors and in gatherings to avoid possible outbreaks. Data released this past Monday by the LA Public Health Department shows increases in numbers of new COVID cases. From April 5th to April 11th, the average daily new case numbers reflect a 23% rise from 783 to 960 compared to the previous week, an increase to an average of 3.2% daily. The test positivity rate stays at 1%, considered to be very low, but data shows that it has been slightly increasing the past several weeks. COVID hospitalization numbers are unchanged and deaths continue to be low. LA Public Health Director Dr. Barbara Ferrer recommends that all residents, especially with the infectious BA2 subvariant circulating in Los Angeles and accounting for many of the cases. Angelinos who are at least 50 years old and have received their boosters over 4 months ago are currently eligible to receive their second booster at various vaccination clinics throughout the county. JC Gabrintina, Mata ng Agila International, Los Angeles, California. Trusted, connected, on point.
Germany's finance minister tested positive for COVID-19 while in the U.S. capital, Washington, D.C., for the spring meetings of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Christian Lindner participated in a G20 meeting of finance ministers and central bank presidents, as well as a G7 meeting before receiving the positive result, as Germany currently holds the G7 presidency. Tests before his flight from Berlin to Washington on Tuesday and in Washington Wednesday were negative before he tested positive in the evening, according to the ministry. A German ministry official reassured the public that Lindner is okay and he has only mild symptoms of COVID-19. But it wasn't clear whether the finance minister would immediately return to Berlin as planned or he would stay put first in the U.S. for health concerns.
Peru's government will present a bill to allow for chemical castration as a penalty for raping a minor. This was prompted by a national outrage over the rape of a 3-year-old girl. Justice Minister Felix Chero said that the government considers that this measure will be an additional penalty for those who commit rape. Chero also added that cabinet members hope those who rape minors will serve prison time and be chemically castrated at the end of their sentences. President Pedro Castillo has been supportive of the bill, saying people who rape minors need to be punished in an exemplary fashion.
Mano dura y medidas más severas contra los depravados y degenerados que destruyen la vida de inocentes familias y de inocentes niños y jóvenes.
Meanwhile, the controversial chemical castration proposal has been criticized by many, including Peru's own health minister, Jorge Lopez, as well as women's rights organizations. Up next, temporary aid can offset inflation's impact on families, according to IMF. Agriculture and climate change linked to declining insect population. And West African lab chimps settle into retirement after life of trauma. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when Mata ng Agila International returns.
This portion is brought to you by SCCI Management and Insurance Agency Corporation and Source Alliance.
Matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Sa pagsisikap na maisulong ang mga positibong pagbabago sa bansa, lalo na sa ekonomiya at kalakalan, mahalaga ang pagsasama-sama at pagkakaisa upang makaisip ng moderno at epektibong mga paraan para lutasin ang mga suliranin sa nakaraan, sa kasalukuyan at sa ating hinaharap. Nagtipon-tipon ang mga lider ng iba't ibang business groups kasama ang mga entrepreneurs at industry experts sa CEO Summit 2022 na ginanap sa Baguio Country Club. 4 na mahalagang layunin ang nasa agenda ng summit: opportunities for growth, transformative leadership, collaborative governance, and the future of smart cities.
So far, lots of great speakers, amazing learning.
What's important is you have the passion. What's important is you have a team that's working on it.
All these in this episode of Open for Business.
The country's top forecasters warned Germany would plunge into a deep recession if its supply of Russian natural gas would suddenly be shut off. A report said that Germany can lose 220 billion euros or 250 billion US dollars in economic output over the next 2 years in the event of such a shock. German GDP would rise by just 1.9% in 2022 and contract by 2.2% in 2023. Growth would be 2.7% this year if the gas keeps flowing. Germany's finance minister Christian Lindner said the government was moving as quickly as possible to ditch Russian energy, but suddenly put a stopper. Cutting Russian gas supplies would likely worsen inflation in Germany, which hit its highest level in more than 40 years last month.
Through targeted and temporary relief, policymakers should take immediate steps to offset the pain caused by surging inflation. This is according to International Monetary Fund Chief Economist Pierre-Olivier Gorincha.
The increase in energy and food price is going to cause hardship for a number of people, especially in low-income households and low-income countries. And so here, what we are recommending is that fiscal authorities try to use targeted measures to try to support vulnerable populations. So that can take the form of utility bill discounts or transfers to low-income households using existing social safety program. In countries that don't have the required infrastructure, it could take the form of energy price subsidies, as long as they are clear, they are transparent, and they are temporary, so that they are not going to affect the budget for too long.
Soaring inflation is hitting poor families especially hard. This has sparked unrest in some countries.
We've seen already in some countries, we've seen people protesting when they see the price of food or basic items increasing very rapidly. So that's something that obviously we are looking at very carefully. And again, we're encouraging countries to really do their best to address this situation that is difficult. And for countries that don't have the fiscal space, we are expecting that pretty quickly there will be a coordinated effort with resources that will be available to help these countries.
Close to 800 households and over 1,000 animals have been forced out of their homes and into evacuation areas as the tunnel fire in Flagstaff, Arizona burns almost 20,000 acres. Lisa Docena has more.
The tunnel fire, which started last Sunday 14 miles north of Flagstaff, forced evacuations along the US 89 North Corridor. Unprecedented winds caused increased danger and challenges for both residents and firefighting crews.
The rapid movement and progression of this fire made the evacuation much more difficult and complicated than we've had in the past. We had deputies and other law enforcement agencies right next to the fire, evacuating homes and animals from many of those residences.
US 89 remains closed north of Flagstaff between mileposts 423 and 445, with no estimated time for reopening. Travelers are asked to avoid the area and seek alternative routes. As of Wednesday, Coconino National Forest reported the tunnel fire had claimed over 19,712 acres, with 0% contained. Resources being used on the fire include approximately 260 firefighters, 3 bulldozers, 24 engines, 1 air attack plane, and 1 Type 3 helicopter.
It's a coordinated effort with all those resources and partners that were listed by Sheriff Driscoll here.
Crews continue to battle the fire, encountering natural gas leaks from foundations, amongst other hazards.
The fire was moving so fast, many of those officers were in harm's way themselves.
Forceful winds today prevented air resources from providing air support in the firefight with retardant drops. A fire investigation team arrived today to begin investigating the fire origin and cause. Because wind predictions from the National Weather Service do not look promising for tomorrow, it is quite possible there will be more evacuations and hazardous situations to come.
I cannot stress enough how rapidly this fire is moving in a northeasterly direction, and folks, if they are under an evacuation order, cannot stress how important it is to leave the fire area.
Lisa Docena, Mata ng Agila International, Phoenix, Arizona. Trusted, connected, on point.
UK researchers found out that insect numbers have plunged by half in some parts of the world due to climate change and intensive agriculture. Their study pointed out that the combined pressures of global heating and farming are driving a substantial decline of insects across the globe. Lead researcher Dr. Charlie Uthwaite of University College London said losing insect populations could be harmful not only to the natural environment but also to human health and food security, particularly with losses of pollinators. According to the published research in areas with high-intensity agriculture and substantial warming, insect numbers have plunged by 49% and the number of different species by 27%, compared with relatively untouched places that have so far avoided the most severe impacts of climate change. Dr. Tim Newbold, also of UCL, offered potential solutions such as planting a wide range of crops and preserving natural habitats.
It took the Fouillet brothers from Paris, France, nearly a year to convert an old and disused underground car park into a huge hydroponic garden. There, they grow 150 varieties of fruits and vegetables under ultraviolet light. The car park had been condemned for 15 years because of damage. After a year of rehabilitation and equipment installation, now it houses the urban farm. The siblings/founders aim to develop soilless cultivation and show that this solution is viable on a larger scale. Additionally, they hire residents of the impoverished community to be urban farmers. The brothers said their goal is to boost the local economy by providing jobs and growing farm-to-table produce. Every day, Thai basil, coriander, or mint are harvested and then delivered to customers, supermarkets, or restaurants. The seedlings are helped along with organic fertilizers, light, and a lot of water.
65 chimps are spread across 6 uninhabited river islands south of Liberia's capital, Monrovia. Having survived decades of invasive experiments in a U.S.-funded research project, the former lab chimps now enjoy veterinary care and 2 meals daily. The chimps are the remainders of a group of about 400 X-test subjects in a research led by a New York blood center in the 70s. According to a vet, some of them underwent 400 biopsies, meaning they were anesthetized, terrified, and depressed 400 times. Since many of the chimps still bear the scars of their grim past, their current caregivers are trained not to do anything that could bring back those kinds of memories.
You know, we cannot release them back in the wild because of all the tests that were done on them. They could you know, have a devastating effect on conservation of other chimps, while free-ranging chimps or wild chimps.
With the rising cost of gas, it comes as no surprise.
Coming up, electric vehicles shine at New York International Auto Show. Novak Djokovic slams Wimbledon ban on Russian and Belarusian tennis players. And the Flash actor Ezra Miller arrested again in Hawaii after throwing a chair at a woman. Find out the details later when Mata ng Agila International returns.
This portion is brought to you by Canreave Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel hand dryers, generators, access control systems.
Mr. Bawal, ang galing mo namang sumayaw. Pwedeng pa-copy ng dance steps mo? Oo naman, Mr. Pwede. Mr. Bawal, ang ganda rin ng forma mo. Pwedeng pa-copy ng forma mo? Oo ba? Mr. Bawal, pa-copy naman sagot mo.
Yan ang hindi pwede. Ang pagsilip sa sagot ng iba, lalong-lalong na sa butuan. Oy! Bawal yan!
Ayon sa Omnibus Election Code, ang pagtatangkang silipin at alamin ang boto ng iba ay isang election offense.
Mr. Pwede? Please report to the principal's office.
Ako si Mr. Bawal, nagpapaalala sa inyo na ang pagsilip sa boto ng ibang botante. Oy! Bawal yan!
A public service message of Net25 for Mata ng Halalan 2022. Matatag, matapang, matapat.
NASA shared on its Instagram a photo of Comet Borisov, the first confirmed interstellar comet to enter our solar system. This runaway point of light pictured by the NASA Hubble Space Telescope is the comet named after amateur astronomer Gennady Borisov, who first observed it in 2019. Astronomers, through observations using NASA's Hubble Space Telescope and National Radio Astronomy Observatory's ALMA, figured out that Comet Borisov has an unusual composition. It has a higher concentration of carbon monoxide than any comet seen at a similar distance. Though Comet Borisov is about the length of 9 football fields, or 0.61 miles, making it relatively small, the interstellar body is indeed a chemical ambassador coming in from a different star system.
It may be considered a sign of the times, the need for more motorists to consider transitioning to hybrid or electric vehicles that is more planet-friendly. What models should one look into? Here's Joanne Soriano at this year's New York International Auto Show to tell us which ones show promise.
I'm at the auto show at the Jacob Javits Convention Center in New York to bring you the latest in automotive news for 2022. In a much-anticipated return to the Javits, this event brought major brands out to showcase their newest models and prototypes. With the rising cost of gas, it comes as no surprise that consumers are looking for economical and environmentally friendly solutions in the form of hybrids and electric vehicles. Ford is one brand committed to the EV space.
Ford is absolutely committed to electrification. So first we started with our Mustang Mach-E, which is 0 to 60 thrills with 0 emissions. And behind me here is the all-new, all-electric F-150 Lightning, and it will be delivered to customers in the coming weeks.
For the open road enthusiast, the show featured many cars ready for families and outdoor travelers looking for their next road trip or camping adventure.
So this is our all-new electric SUV, the 2023 Solterra. This is an excellent EV for a family adventure and features like X mode to help going off-road. So you can take it further off the pavement, off into the trail, off into the campground, places that most EVs can't go.
One of the most exciting comebacks at the show was the Volkswagen ID Buzz.
Well, the ID Buzz is our reimagined version of the classic microbus, only using an electric architecture, electric platform. This car is going to go on sale in Europe in the fall. People just love it.
The show was full of interactive exhibits, adoptable pets, and even rides for the thrill seekers. The auto show runs through April 24. Joanne Soriano, Mata ng Agila International, New York, New York. Trusted, connected, on point.
The head of the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, said the global economy is in poor health because of the war in Ukraine and the lingering effects of the pandemic. IMF's Kristalina Georgieva made her remarks at the spring meeting of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. She said money isn't buying what it used to, and that's hurting ordinary people around the world.
Accelerated inflation. It has become a clear and present danger for many countries. Rising food and fuel prices are straining the budgets of ordinary families to a breaking point.
Georgieva said inflation is not the only problem. There are other factors in play as well.
Financial tightening because of the need to counter inflation, hitting countries with high debt the hardest, frequent wide-ranging lockdowns in China, causing further bottlenecks in global supply chains. These are additional dark clouds weighing on the global economy.
In the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Nayef Al-Assaf, founder of Petex, drives his pet grooming van through the streets of Riyadh to provide mobile pet care services for his customers. Al-Assaf said he was inspired by the COVID-19 lockdown period to offer a convenient service for pet lovers in the Saudi capital.
زي ما يقولون الحاجة أم الاختراع، فأنا بديت الفكرة كنت أحتاج سيرفيس والمحلات كانت كلها مقفلة في السعودية وقت الكورونا، ففكرت إنه ليش ما السيرفيس يجي لين الكاستمر ببيته، فبديت في الفكرة. سوينا أول تراك بلشنا في 2021 والآن الحمد لله عندنا سيارتين وعندنا ستاف أنا عندي حيوانات وبحب الحيوانات مرة وعندي باشنت على البزنس. أنا دائما كان عندي حلم إني أسوي بزنس، فجمعت الاثنين، جمعت الهواية وجمعت البزنس واشتغلت في شغلة أحبها أصلا يعني. فأعتقد إنه
The 25-year-old pet lover added that with Petex, all the customers have to do is set an appointment with him and he would go to their doorstep to groom their dogs. His customers have nothing but praises for his mobile pet care services.
بالنسبة لي أنا عندي 4 كلاب، فطريقة النقل بتكون صعبة علي عشان لو بروح أستخدم الخدمة هذه بمحل، فكانت convenient صراحة لي إني يجوا لين البيت و ياخذوا شاور عندي يعني.
The Grand Slam organizers said in a statement that tennis players from Russia and Belarus will not be allowed to compete at this year's Wimbledon. Kremlin said that the reported ban on Russian players taking part in this year's Wimbledon tennis tournament in Britain would hurt the tournament itself, given Russia's tennis prowess, and thus was unacceptable. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters on a conference call, given that Russia is a strong tennis country, the competitions will suffer. Peskov added that to make sports people hostages of political intrigue is unacceptable, and he hopes the players won't lose their fitness. The ban on Russian players prevents world number 2 Daniil Medvedev and Andrei Rublev, ranked 8th, from competing in the men's draw, as well as Anastasia Pavlyuchenkov, who is 15th in the women's rankings. Women's world number 4 Arina Sablenka and 2-time Grand Slam champion Victoria Azarenka of Belarus will also be affected.
ATP and WTA organizers branded Wimbledon's move of banning Russian and Belarusian players from the 2022 tournament as unfair and very disappointing. The All England Lawn Tennis Club, which runs Wimbledon, said it was acting to limit Russia's global influence through the strongest means possible. However, ATP and WTA bosses claim that the Wimbledon ban is discriminatory and sets a damaging precedent. We believe that today's unilateral decision by Wimbledon and the LTA to exclude players from Russia and Belarus from this year's British grass court swing is unfair and has the potential to set a damaging precedent for the game, an ATP statement said. The WTA said the decision was neither fair nor justified. The WTA said in a statement, a fundamental principle of the WTA is that individual athletes may participate in professional tennis events based on merit and without any form of discrimination. Meanwhile, men's world number one Novak Djokovic also criticized the decision. He said the athletes have nothing to do with it or with the war. When politics interferes with sport, the result is not good. Wimbledon, the world's or the most high profile of tennis's 4 Grand Slam events, runs from June 27 to July 10 this year.
The Flash actor Ezra Miller was arrested in Hawaii after allegedly throwing a chair at a woman and leaving her with a gash on her forehead. The new assault case happened on the same day the actor appeared via Zoom in a high-low courtroom. He pleaded no contest to a disorderly conduct charge, which stemmed from an incident at a karaoke bar last month. Hawaii Island police said Miller was taken into custody for second-degree assault. Miller allegedly became irate when asked to leave an acquaintance's home and threw a chair at a woman. The victim reported a half-inch cut to her forehead. Police said that Miller was subsequently released pending further investigation. Queen Elizabeth II, the world's oldest sitting monarch, turns 96 today. Her actual birthday is mostly reserved for private celebrations, though is marked by gun salutes in some of the country's most famous parks. Aside from gun salutes, cannon fire from the Tower of London and Hyde Park also marked the Queen's event. The band of the Coldstream Guards played the happy birthday music to mark the 96th birthday of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, alongside the 1st Battalion of the Coldstream Guards during the changing of the guard at Windsor Castle. British media said the Queen has flown by her helicopter from her Windsor Castle home west of London to her Sandringham country estate in eastern England to celebrate the occasion with little fanfare. Today is the Queen's actual birthday, and her official birthday this year coincides with 4 days of public events from June 2 to 5 to mark the Queen's record-breaking 70th year on the throne.
What events happened on April 21st in history? Here are some interesting ones. In 2019, actor and comedian Volodymyr Zelensky won the second round of elections in Ukraine. He received 73% of the votes and was proclaimed president of Ukraine. In 1997, Diosdado Macapagal Sr., the 9th president of the Philippines, died at the age of 86. He served from 1961 to 1965 as president and the 6th vice president from 1957 to 1961. He also served as a member of the House of Representatives and headed the Constitutional Convention of 1970. In 2019, Swedish climate change activist Greta Thunberg spoke in an environmental protest camp at Marble Arch in London. This led to protests across the city for 4 days and brought parts of London to a standstill.
And tonight's broadcast ends with a quote from Queen Elizabeth II herself. When life seems hard, the courageous do not lie down and accept defeat. Instead, they are all the more determined to struggle for a better future. So they say, fall down 7 times, come back up 8. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates in our social media channels. I am CJ Hirro.
And I'm Nina Ricci, Alagao, Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
This program